Corruption by P.K. Armstrong. Chapter 36. Roland was finishing up his reports on Mrs. Stark's interview, including Francine Dale's report and his information on Violet's stalker. He had wanted to leave her out altogether, but Bash had made an argument for continuity in the investigative process. Roland, if you leave the information out about Violet's stalker, then a defense attorney is going to stick a wedge in the hole it makes in our case and make out that you are presenting illegally obtained evidence. So Roland had included the information. He had worried about the information obtained by Sam Peterson, but since he was with the Attorney General's commission, that information would no doubt be accepted by the courts. He had spoken with Adrian Baker at the DA's office, and because Angel had gone through their office to interview Evan Michaels, that evidence was solid. He felt the case was on really good ground, but he wished he could find Stan Granger. Finding a man who didn't want to be found could be difficult. Finding a cop that didn't want to be found was a whole different story. Roland began going over Stan Granger's background again. Now that the captain was able to let in some of the top brass about the corruption, the green light had been given and some additional information forwarded over that even Gwen Johnson and her task force were never privy to. It seemed that Stan Granger and Cindy Mailer's relationship began long before Stan took over the auto shop where Cindy worked. They were high school sweethearts, and apparently Violet would have had a big brother or sister had Cindy not lost the baby. Roland leaned back in his chair. If Angel was right, then Sorensen may have used Stan's relationship with Cindy to blackmail Stan into doing anything. Stan would have done anything for the love of his life. So why did he run and leave Cindy here, vulnerable to Sorensen? He was contemplating the incongruity of Stan's actions when his desk phone rang. Detective? Yes. This is dispatch operator 03571 patching a call through to you, Ray APB on Stan Granger. Thanks. Transferring call. After 2 clicks, Roland spoke. Detective Roland, do you have information on Stan Granger? Yes, he's hiding in the nut roasting plant just outside of town. How do you know this? I'm a friend. The male voice hesitated. Well, not really a friend. He arrested me once, and I've done some work for him since then. He asked me to help him get away. The voice was muffled, no doubt on purpose, and Roland strained to hear. What is your name? There was silence for a moment. Then, you'd better move quickly. He's headed out of town when night falls. The call disconnected. Roland found the call strange, not because it came through dispatch. Unless they utilized the tips hotline, most people just called 911 if they had information on a crime. But the call seemed almost serendipitous. He sighed and got up from his desk to go brief the captain. Angel was just about to drive away from Cindy Mailer's house when her phone rang. Hey, we got a lead, Roland said briskly. We got a tip that Stan Granger is on the run. He's waiting until dark before he moves out of town. Angel put the car back in park. Where is he holed up? A hotel? A warehouse on the north side of town. Could it possibly be the warehouse where Mrs. Stark was held? Angel could hear the rustling of papers and the sounds of cars passing. Are you in your car? It very well may be the warehouse where she was held. It's an old peanut roastery. Mrs. Stark said she smelled birch nuts. He backtracked. Yeah, I'm in my car en route to the warehouse. Angel's internal warning radar started going off. Bash is with you, right? You've got backup? No, Bash is not with me, but I informed the captain and backup is in motion. I will wait for them. Not that I will need it, it's just Granger, he retorted impatiently. No, that's not what I mean. Look, I gotta go. That's the captain calling me. Roland disconnected. Angel had trouble controlling her mind. When she went into a type of hyper mode, the facts and evidence were a blur playing through her mind like an old-fashioned movie reel. She knew she was beginning to panic and closed her eyes and took a few deep breaths. The movie in her head slowed down so she could see each frame. There was something about what her mom told her about Stan Granger's possible motives for getting involved with men like Andrew Vernon and David Sorensen. After talking to Cindy Mailer, she agreed that the most likely scenario is Granger was making an attempt to take care of his family or protect them. What would threaten his family? Violet was safe with her. Thoughts of what Roland could be walking into started surfacing again, and bile began backing up into her throat. She opened her eyes and took a long sip of aloe vera juice. She was about to close her eyes again when she spotted Cindy Mailer come flying back out of the house at a dead run, waving erratically. She was clearly in distress. Angel exited her vehicle and rushed to meet her. Cindy, what is it? What's wrong? Cindy was visibly shaking. She looked at Angel desperately. Oh, I just checked my phone. I got a message from Stan. I think someone did something to him. Why do you say that? Listen, just listen. She shoved her cell phone in Angel's face and pushed play on her voicemail. Cindy, it's me, Stan. Look, I think something is about to happen. You have to get out of there. You have to go to the place where we always said we'd meet if something. No, no, stay away. I'm not telling anyone. I'm not. The message stopped abruptly. When did he send this? Angel asked. I don't know. I don't know. My phone hasn't been working properly. I've been getting messages sometimes a day later. She began punching the buttons and finally found the right button. Call from Tuesday at 12:52 a.m. Angel's mind began working furiously. Tuesday was when Stan Granger went missing. She knew what wasn't clicking. Stan Granger wasn't the type of man to run, not when Cindy Mailer was still here. So the tip Roland had received was not from Stan Granger, but whomever held him captive. David Sorensen. Angel grabbed Cindy's phone and forwarded the voicemail message to herself. You've got to help him, Cindy shouted. Angel stopped just short of grabbing her by the arms and shaking her, but then she thought a minute. She was about to tell Cindy to go back into the house, but realized the best way to know where she was and that she was safe would be to keep her with her. There's no time to lose. Get in the car, she yelled at Cindy. As they jumped in Angel's SUV, she tried dialing Christopher back, but it went straight to voicemail. He only turned his phone off when he was interviewing or operational, like serving a warrant. She tried Captain Davis, and it went to voicemail too. Finally, she got a hold of Bash. Hello? Bash said. Bash, it's Angel. Are you with Roland yet? No, I'm leaving the courthouse. I had to secure the warrants. Bash, listen, I think Roland is walking into an ambush. What? I've got Cindy Mailer, Stan Granger's girlfriend, with me. She just received a message from Granger and the message is cut off because he was assaulted. Okay, so how does that equate to ambush? Angel's voice was strained with having to take the time to explain. I say assaulted, but if it were bad enough, he could be dead. Angel cringed when she heard Cindy's gasp, but she had to continue. But what if he isn't dead? Bash cut her off. Then who tipped Roland off? Exactly. Stan Granger is not a runner. He would have never left Cindy here. He would have made sure she got away first. I think the tip came from whomever is holding Stan captive. Listen to this. Play the message on speakerphone, Cindy. Cindy played the message. Bash, did you hear? Is there a way to get a hold of the captain or the entry team or Roland? Angel's voice was getting desperate. Yes, I think so. Let me work on it. You are not to go to that warehouse, Bash admonished. Of course. Angel disconnected. Cindy glanced at Angel. Are we going to the warehouse? Of course. Angel flew through the streets, taking a few shortcuts she was familiar with. Cindy Mailer said little, occasionally letting out a small yelp when Angel weaved between cars too closely for her comfort. She took the final turn and entered a service road that led to the back of the plant. She slammed the vehicle in park and looked at Cindy Mailer. No matter what happens, you need to stay in the car. Got it? Cindy nodded. But don't you think Stan is in there? Yes, I do, but having a civilian in the middle of a police operation is dangerous. Aren't you a civilian? Angel sighed angrily. She was right, of course. She didn't have any business there either. She dialed Bash again, but got no answer. Her thoughts turned to Roland, and she closed her eyes, trying to think logically instead of emotionally. What are you thinking? Cindy whispered. I'm trying to figure out which course of action would be the best for Roland. But Stan is in there too. I know that, Cindy, but at this point, if I'm right and Stan is being held against his will, the best thing is to make sure that Roland has what he needs. She turned to look at her. Roland is Stan's best shot. Roland tried several doors before he found one that would allow him access to the plant. Rusted at the hinges with a broken padlock, it creaked way too much for his comfort. After entering, he stopped to allow time for his eyes to adjust to the light streaming in from the ventilation windows set inches away from the ceiling. Roland looked at the floor. The cement was covered with peanut, walnut, pecan, and cashew dust, at least a half-inch thick. There were no footprints, save for his own. If Stan was in this building, he didn't come through this way. His phone buzzed a brief notification, and at the same time he heard a noise to his left. He pulled his service revolver and his flashlight and began a sweep. He knew backup was 7 minutes away, but he knew he couldn't wait. He looked down a long hallway with doors on both sides and began to make his way slowly toward the noise, which was now a steady scrape, the sound of cloth being dragged across wood. Angel sent another text, and then she had enough. Stay here, she said to Cindy, and jumped out of the vehicle. Opening the back gate, she put on her bulletproof vest and grabbed a flashlight and a collapsible baton. You're not going to take your gun? Cindy asked incredulously. Angel shook her head. I'm a civilian, remember? Angel knew the folly of carrying a firearm into an unknown situation. Depending on a person's weakness, being in possession of a gun could make an officer overconfident and careless. Besides, Roland was in there with his gun, and if backup were on the way, there would be several armed officers arriving. The last thing they needed was someone in there with another gun. She closed the gate, mindful of the echo, and put her earpiece in and her cell phone on silent in her pocket. When backup arrives, let them know I'm in there and have them call me on my cell phone, she commanded authoritatively. It didn't matter. From the look on Cindy's face, she had no confidence in Angel's abilities at the moment. Angel walked down the dirt drive, but cut into the overgrown grass about 30 feet from the building. She reached a clearing where the old occupants of the plant probably parked delivery trucks and utility vehicles. There were some trees here, so she ducked behind one and squatted, resting on the balls of her feet, scanning the building. There was a low loading dock with a large metal door that looked like it was still secure, but there was a smaller door that was clearly broken, as it stood partly open and creaked with each breath of wind. Angel studied her surroundings and, seeing no movement, ran swiftly from her cover to the door. Peering in the open door, she noted the darkness, stepped just inside the door, and found a large piece of machinery to duck behind while her eyes adjusted to the dim light. She looked around her surroundings and noted more large machinery and dust an inch thick on the floor. She sat squatted behind a large furnace and listened. She heard it a second or two later, voices coming from a lower level. Looking around, she realized that the area she entered was almost like a mezzanine that looked out over the whole factory floor. The voices grew louder, and she heard a scream. She knew she needed to move. In the dust, she saw footprints, two sets, side by side, headed toward a staircase with a rickety railing. Having moved out in the open, Angel pulled her collapsible baton out, extended it, and then powered her flashlight on. Taking the stairs, she descended slowly so as not to break her neck on the rickety stairs. Thankfully, the door at the bottom of the stairs was open, so she had no need to be worried about the noise from opening an old rusty door. It was dark in the hallway, and since she wasn't sure of the exact position of the voices, she killed her light and once again paused to adjust to the darkness. Another scream came just as she began making her way towards the sounds.